Morning, everyone. We're just waiting for a few more moments just to make sure everybody's in the room, but it looks like we've got a good number of people coming along. There's over 100 people joining us today, so it's great to see everyone. It's 10 o'clock, so we want to try and stick to time. So I'm just going to do a bit of a welcome and then hand over to Kenna and our speakers. But so thanks for coming along. Great to see all of you. If we could just ask everyone just to keep your microphones turned off when you're not speaking. And Kenna's going to be pinning whoever is speaking, so you don't have to worry about that. And this is the first event in our place-based peer learning program. I just wanted to flag that we've got Marie Biswell and Donna West providing BSL interpretation, and they'll be alternating throughout the programme. And so I think Kenna will be pinning them as well. So just to give you a bit of background before we start, Arts Council England's 10-year strategy, Let's Create, has a significant focus on place. And in our strategy, we set out a number of ambitions, and one of those is around cultural communities, and with a stated goal that villages, towns and cities in England should thrive through a collaborative approach to culture. And in order to support that goal, and as part of our delivery plan, we've been working with partners to grow and expand a place-based peer learning programme. And this has grown out of activity that we were doing with our Creative People and Places programme, but we're really happy that it now incorporates other place-based partnerships, local cultural education partnerships and cultural compacts. And this programme has been co-created with representatives of those networks, so they've helped to shape the programme. And the aim of the place-based peer learning is to support participants to build networks, foster collaboration, exchange knowledge, best practice, ideas, opportunities with other place-based partnerships, and to learn from failure as much as success. So it's really important that this is a safe space that people can exchange their experiences and share what works and also what doesn't work. It will support programs to support the community and empower the community to take part in decision-making around their own cultural experiences. And it's also going to be open to the wider sector. But all of this is rooted in place-based working and is intended to be a safe space to explore what does and doesn't work. And we really want to emphasize that, because we also want to say that we at Arts Council England are learning too, and we'll be joining some of these sessions, but we just want to emphasize that this is a safe space for people to explore what does and doesn't work. So the programme's going to explore a series of different themes that emerged through the co-creation process with the steering group representatives. And the first theme we're exploring, and the subject of today, is cross-sector partnerships. So in a moment, you're going to hear from 3 different speakers who have different experiences of cross-sector partnerships. So we're going to start by hearing from Annabel Turpin, who's currently Director of Stockton Arts Centre and co-director of Future Arts Centres, and soon to be Director of Storyhouse in Chester, Lockey Storyhouse. And Annabel's going to be talking about an arts centre approach to cross-sector partnership working, drawing on her experience at ARC Stockton, as well as wider learning from Future Arts Centres network. And ARC's developed a number of long-term place-based partnerships that enhance their programme and increase their reach, and are helping to create a genuine shift in community ownership of the venue. And then our next speaker is Kat Stock, and Kat's Learning and Delivery Manager of West Midlands Police. And she was previously the lead for the community engagement and partnership working on the Coventry City of Culture police team. And Kat's talking about arts and policing when worlds collide. And we'll consider how the West Midlands Police and the Coventry City of Culture Trust work together to achieve positive change. And our final speaker is Sally Lockey, who is the director from Right Up Our Street, one of our Creative People and Places programs based in Doncaster. And as part of Right Up Our Streets Phase 4 programme, they've been doing some remarkable work in partnership with the Balby Bridge estate, having committed to a 3-year programme working on that estate to simply get to know the community on a deeper level and begin to understand how the delivery of arts and culture activity might meet the needs and interests of people who live there. And Sally is going to be joined by Tracy Fry from Doncaster City Council, and Tracy is the local family hub manager. So that's it from me. I just want to give you a bit of background as to how Place-Based Peer Learning programme came about. It's your programme, so do feed back to us if you have any particular ideas or themes that you want to address. And I'm now going to hand over to Kenna, and Kenna is the person that you really need to go to, who's really been shaping this and coordinating it and pulling all of it together. So thanks. Over to you, Kenna.
Good morning, everyone. Really nice to see you all here. I also just want to self-describe. I have brown hair and blue eyes, and I'm wearing a light blue spotty dress with a gray cardigan. I would like to welcome our first speaker. First, I'm going to just screen share really quickly and give you a little overview of today's event. So welcome. We're really pleased, as Rebecca said, to welcome you to our first place-based peer learning event. There will be more, so watch this space. Today, after our little welcome, we're going to have Annabel until about 10:40, and then Kat. We're going to take a little break, and then we'll have Sally and Tracy from Right Up Our Street, followed by some small group discussions, and then we'll have closing thoughts, and then we'll close at around 12:30. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Annabel. I'm just going to pin her so we can see her at the top of the screen.
Thanks, Kenna. And hello, everyone. How lovely to be here at the very first event. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for turning up. It's lovely to see so many faces. I guess I just wanted to start by saying I'm not here as an expert. I firmly believe that we're all just making this stuff up as we go along, and I'm just sharing what I've learned in the spirit of peer learning. And I hope that if it's not useful to you, at least it might spark a bit of debate, and you'll all have lots of questions and comments. So I'm as interested in hearing from you in terms of feedback and thoughts on what I say as I am here to share, really. But it's great to have the chance. We've been working hard at cross-sector partners at ARC in Stockton over the last few years. So it's always useful to do these things and spend a little bit of time yourself kind of reflecting on where we've got to. Just get my slides sorted here. Oops, there we are. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction, just to give you a little bit of context for the place we're working in, share how our approach has changed over the years, give some examples of the partnerships that we've established and the impact that they've made. And as I say, I'm hoping that you'll have lots of questions. As Rebecca's said, I'm going to draw on my experience at ARC, but also as part of future art centres. So, as some of you might know, ARC is an art centre situated in Stockton-on-Tees in the northeast of England, which is a post-industrial town situated within a cluster of 5 local authority areas which form the Tees Valley. The Tees Valley is a sub-region led by an elected Conservative mayor, and it's been held up as a shining example of the UK government's levelling up agenda in action, seeing considerable investment in regeneration, some of which has flowed into culture. Stockton's population is around 190,000 and the wider Tees Valley is around 700,000. So it gives you a sense of our catchment area. And our communities are predominantly white, and ARC is situated in one of the 10% most deprived wards in the country. This is my favourite definition of partnership working. We've all been there, I suspect. A pot of funding appears and requires a specific mix of partners, or a group of organisations get together because they know they stand more chance of securing the money if they work together. But partnerships are relationships. I think you need to get to know each other and check you're compatible before you move in together or start a family. And I've so often read partnership project evaluations that have reflected on a mismatch of expectation or a lack of clarity around roles and responsibilities, or that they've run aground because it turned out the partners just wanted different things. So that's the first thing that I've really learned, is that you need to treat partnerships like relationships, and they work best when you take time to build up trust, honesty, and clarity about who puts the bins out. The second thing that I think has been really significant for us at ARC is how you first approach establishing a partnership, because definitely over the last 10 years, we've fundamentally changed our approach. So in the past, we'd be setting out to run a project or a programme, and we'd be looking for potential partners that could engage or support it. So maybe we'd be working with an artist or a company, exploring a particular theme or subject, and we'd be looking to connect to local communities, and we'd think, oh, such and such a charity or organisation would be great to work with. And we'd trot off to talk to them, often approaching someone working on the front line, and see if they'd be interested in working with us. And sometimes they would be, because there were obvious benefits for the people that they were working with. The projects would happen, people would engage, and we'd all think we'd done a good job. But those kind of partnerships come and go, and you're sort of left with the, well, what's the next project? And what impact has it really made on place over and above the individuals that took part? What's the legacy? And even more frustratingly, and we've definitely found this, next time you want to work with that organisation, you usually have to start again, because the relationship's lapsed and the on-the-ground contacts that you've established have moved on. I'm going to just digress a little bit here and talk about Future Arts Centres. So, as well as running ARC, I'm also co-director of Future Arts Centres, which is a network of about 130 members across the UK, and currently one of the Arts Council's investment principles support organisations. Back in 2016, Future Arts Centres was funded by the Esme Fairbairn Foundation to support 9 founding partners of the network to explore new models of partnership. As a group of arts centres, we recognised that the main barriers for us as CEOs in terms of forging new partnerships was time and access to expertise, and the funding helped provide resource to overcome those barriers. So the project involved a number of strands, but I wanted to focus on 2 particular areas that we explored today that led to some of the learning that changed ARC's approach. So at the time, we were constantly being told by funders, by policymakers, and often by members of our own boards that we should be getting money out of higher education. So many of us had relationships with universities, but they were usually very slow to develop, and then temporary, because by the time they'd landed, people moved on. It felt like we were perpetually trapped in a cycle of conversations that never really led anywhere, other than to relatively momentary projects or very small amounts of money. And we really wanted to try and understand why that was the case and how we could build more sustainable relationships. And the other area that we wanted to explore was around housing providers, recognising that they house many of the communities that we were trying to engage. So one of our members, the Albany in Deptford, were developing a partnership with their local housing provider, and we were keen to see whether that was something that could be replicated elsewhere. So thanks to the Esme Fairbairn Foundation funding, we were able to take time to go and talk to people working in those areas. We spoke to vice-chancellors of universities, CEOs of housing associations, and also organisations working with them. And there were 3 key things we learned. Universities were not going to fund arts organisations, so we needed to think about the relationship in terms of other benefits for both partners. Housing associations were trying to improve people's lives through housing, just as we were trying to improve people's lives through arts and culture. So we had the same mission, but a different way of delivering it, and we'd never really articulated it in that way before. And the third thing was about language. Language felt really important in those conversations that we had, and it was often a barrier. So if we were going to build genuine partnerships, then we needed to learn their language. And so we took that learning and reshaped our approach at ARC. So this is how we work now. The starting point for almost any partnership at ARC is from a position of curiosity and interest in what other organisations are doing. So rather than approaching them with a project or idea of how we might work together in mind, we go in at the top and we start the conversation by saying, we're really interested in what you're doing and we'd love to find out more. And what we found is people are really happy to talk about themselves and much less suspicious if they think you're coming to listen and learn than if they think you're there to sell something to them or to secure their resources. And that conversation gives us an opening to say, we're interested in that too. Maybe we could work together. And it sounds so simple, but we definitely fell into the trap of thinking it was all about us and what we wanted to do, and failed to see partners as equals or to get to know them and their agendas before proposing that we work together. So has this approach worked? Yes, it has. And I'm going to share some examples, some of the partnerships that we've developed. And the first one is called More Stuff Like This, Please. And it's so called because during a creative consultation with young people, we asked them what they wanted and they said they wanted more stuff like this, please. So that's what we call the programme. And the story behind this that I wanted to share is that in 2017, I asked to meet the Director of Children's Services at our local council and asked him what the key challenges and priorities were for the council. And we talked about lots of things, but the area that was occupying him the most was around looked after children, as they would call them. We talked about corporate parenting, about the social and educational support that's put in place for children in care, but how no one was responsible for their entitlement to culture. We talked about how ARC could help with that, and we did not talk about money. We agreed to convene a further meeting with some colleagues, and eventually we ran a story of change process over several months, involving all stakeholders, including care experienced children and young people, obviously. It cost about £3,000, and we agreed to pay for half each. And that feels really important because they would have paid for the whole thing, but this was about working together, about establishing an equal relationship, and about making sure that this developed into a strategic partnership and didn't end up just being a council project. And by the end of that year, we'd used our story of change to secure £40,000 from Culture Bridge North East, matched by £40,000 from Stockton Borough Council. It never felt like ARC was asking them for money, but that it was a genuinely shared project that they were choosing to invest in, recognising that we could use our resources and expertise to unlock bridge funds. Five years on, and our More Stuff Like This Please programme with care experienced children and young people continues. Stockton Borough Council Children's Services commit between £10,000 and £20,000 per year from their core budget, which we match with support in kind and project funds where we can raise them. That whole programme would not have happened if I hadn't started the relationship by asking about their priorities rather than talking about ours. The second example is around our relationship with the Northern School of Art, which has used our learning from our exploration of higher education. And the Northern School is based in Hartlepool and Middlesbrough, two of the other areas in the Tees Valley. And we've built an amazing relationship underpinned by an MOU signed with the Vice Principal. And we primarily have worked on their BA and MA courses in acting for stage and screen. At the point they were setting up the courses, rather than think, how much money can we get out of this? Our starting point was to think, how can we work together in a way that helps us both achieve what we want to? ARC has a huge commitment to supporting artists working in performance, and we recognise the need to invest early to encourage early career artists to stay in the Tees Valley. So by working with the Northern School, we could help equip students with the skills, knowledge, networks and contacts that we knew that they would need to navigate a freelance performance career, as well as enriching our programme through showcasing their work that's made locally for and by local people, reflective of their lives, which is exactly what our artistic course is about. We now have a whole season of Northern School work every year, all priced on a pay what you decide basis, so accessible for audiences. It gives us performance work in our programme that we couldn't otherwise afford, and it gives students the real life experience of presenting in a professional venue to real audiences, not just to fellow students. No money changes hands, we just split the pay what you decide income 50-50. The courses have been running for 5 years now, and so what we're seeing is artists graduating who understand ARC and our audiences and want to make work for our programme. So the winner of the first ARC Award, which is given to a third-year student following a showcase of work, he's just had his first Arts Council grant to make a show that we'll be presenting at ARC. We've also co-commissioned theatre makers to create work with the students, most notably Eve Lee, and the script that she wrote in collaboration with the students has since been produced professionally by Sheffield Theatres and also presented by a theatre in Germany. So the long-term gains are evident. And if we'd started with money in mind, I don't think any of that would have happened. They'd probably be hiring the theatre once a year to present something that we weren't interested in. And as you can see, it's working for them too. Give me a second to read that. We've also managed to build a partnership with our local housing provider. This one's been a bit of a slow burn, if I'm honest, not least because it got interrupted by COVID. But again, we went in at the top asking to meet a director and expressing interest in their work and their plans. We listened to their challenges and talked about how creative activity could help create social connections between residents and ownership over shared spaces. So we developed a programme that delivered creative activity co-designed with residents in their residential settings, but also provided a transport and ticket fund to enable them to visit ARC independently. And this was entirely funded by 13 Housing, around £20,000 for the first year's programme. But again, it never felt like we were asking them for money. It was to do something that we wanted to do. It was much more that we were using our expertise and our resources to help them do something that was part of their work. I'm going to give a couple of other examples in brief. We have an ongoing relationship with Wellington Square Shopping Centre in Stockton, which has supported and funded a whole range of activities. We've helped them select and manage the installation of a number of murals and other artistic interventions, really about improving their customer experience, also giving local artists work. And we've accessed empty shops for radical arts projects, taking the time as a 24-hour durational installation piece. And we regularly perform excerpts of work in the centre as part of our raising awareness and kind of, engaging shoppers. The advocacy and promotional support the centre gives us is incredible. We don't pay for any of that, but they're always giving us shout outs, doing announcements in the centre. And we're in the process of formalising that relationship through a memorandum of understanding, which we hope will lead to lots more arts projects in the future. Through a local third sector network, I met the CEO of Middlesbrough and Stockton Mines. And as we got to know each other, it felt like there could be some potential to work together. So when the comic relief funding for arts and health projects came out, it felt natural to look at applying jointly. And we've secured £140,000 for a 2-year programme to work with adults with mild to moderate mental health conditions. But the important thing is that the relationship came before the funding. And following on from that, through the same network, actually, we connected with a new CEO of a local charity that works with girls and women with experience of the criminal justice system and or sex work. And we've met a few times now. We've talked about the challenges communities in Stockton are facing, challenges that we're facing as charities in that area. And we've started to identify where our agendas overlap. And it feels like we really appreciate each other's strengths and expertise, and that there's a genuine willingness to collaborate. So a few months ago, a tender came up to deliver some work as part of the local community mental health transformation programme, something previously I probably wouldn't even have heard about and definitely not considered bidding for. So we explored it as a kind of possible partnership of the three of us. And we actually decided it wasn't right for us. If I'm honest, we thought it was quite badly thought through, not worth investing our resources in, didn't think it would make the impact that the commissioners were trying to make. But that conversation in itself really helped us understand more about each other and how we could work together. So now a new tender's come up to establish a collaborative model for peer link support, supporting adults who face multiple disadvantage identified through TATI. Yep, me neither. See what I mean about learning a new language. For anyone that doesn't know what TATI is, I've just learned it's team around the individual, and it's about taking a very person-centered approach to support. I can't tell you how out of my depth I feel when I'm talking about this tender with the other two CEOs, but I am genuinely held by them because they are much more knowledgeable in these fields, and that really gives us the confidence to be part of it. And they believe that ARC has a really important part to play, and some really important opportunities, expertise and resources to bring to the partnership. So I think the three of us recognise that this partnership could make a massive difference, not just to the individuals it supports, but to the collaborative framework around Stockton, as well as to how the council commissions services. So all being well, we're meeting next week. We're going to take that forward and bid for that tender. I could go on. There are lots more place-based partnerships that we've established, but I wanted to try and extract and summarise some of the things that we've learned. So here's my list of things that I've been reflecting on. I think the first thing is that we've learned, don't make it about the money. And yeah, of course, money may follow, as you've seen in some of the examples I've given. And we all know we need it, and we all know we need it to make meaningful activity happen. But we've just found that partnerships are much more sustainable if that isn't the starting point. Secondly, we've learned to be really curious. As I said earlier, we start from a position of wanting to learn about the partner organisation, not wanting to talk about ours. And we show up, like we try and be visible, we commit to going to something they're putting on, we demonstrate our interest through our behaviours, not just through the conversation. And thirdly, we've really learned to go in at the top. And I think sometimes we can be a bit apologetic in the arts. We think we're not as important as other organisations, or that we don't run proper businesses. And I think we've really pushed ourselves at ARC to assume a kind of position of authority, to refer to ourselves as being an anchor institution. And we try and go in with an expectation that never doubts they would want to meet us. And if I'm honest, it feels really awkward sometimes, but you have to make them think you're important enough to meet. And we've actually found that building relationships from the top and the bottom, and many of these organisations really do have very old-fashioned hierarchical structures, building those relationships across the organisation just means it's much less likely that the relationship will fracture when someone moves on. And we love MOUs. Memorandum of Understandings are fantastic things. They often don't really commit anyone to anything. For me, they're just a kind of statement of intent to work together. And we usually frame ours in that way. But what it does is it makes it official. It gives staff something to point at, and it gives everyone in both organisations permission to work together. As I mentioned earlier, we really set out to learn their language. We've learned that it builds familiarity and confidence that we have shared aims and values, and it's really helped us navigate those relationships as equals. Google is a fantastic thing when you need it. We've also learned not to be afraid to talk about the money when the time comes. We don't ask for it, but we do talk really clearly and openly about how much plans might cost. And we've learned to value our own contributions in terms of resources and expertise. So in other people's worlds, they don't call it support in kind. We've really learned to put a figure on it and include it in the budget. That is our contribution. That is what we're making. And I think the final thing is that we bring the energy and the drive. So we're often the partner that keeps it going. We're the one that puts the meetings in, that shares the stories, that keeps everyone motivated. Because you can have great conversations, but if everyone goes back to their desk and waits for someone else to take it forward, it just won't move. So we're not afraid to step up and lead it. It doesn't mean we have to do everything, but it does mean that things happen and don't run aground. So they're the top things I've learned and the things that I try and remember when we're thinking about partnership working. But there's one final thing that I wanted to say about collaborating, which applies within the arts as well as to cross-sector working. And that is that I believe you have to be prepared to give up power, but hold on to responsibility when you're working collaboratively. So ultimately, if we really want to make a difference to our local communities and an impact on the places that we're working in, we have to be influenced by local people. And more than influenced, we have to allow others to have a say in what we do and how we do it, whether that's individuals or partner organisations. And that means giving up or sharing the power. But I don't think we should forget that we're here to do a job. Many of us receive public funding to do what we do, and therefore the responsibility to deliver effective activity, to look after the people involved, to make a difference with what we do, to make best use of our resources. For me, that has to stay with us. And I think to be comfortable giving up power, but retaining responsibility requires trust. And that's why trust has to be at the heart of building any effective partnership. So getting to know your partners is a way of building trust in them. But I think it's important to think about how you can build their trust in you as well. I hope that's been really useful. As I said at the beginning, I'm not an expert in this, but it's been really brilliant to spend a bit of time reflecting and to draw out some of the things that I've learned. I'm really happy to answer any questions, but also very interested in hearing any thoughts or comments or reflections from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. That was really interesting. Please put your questions for Annabelle in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and you can unmute and ask your question. I will be monitoring the chat with the help of my colleague Lucy as your questions roll in. I'm going to get us started with a question, Annabelle. What you said, don't be afraid to talk about money. How do you broach that subject? And you said you don't necessarily bring it up directly. So what is your approach to that?
I think it's about when you bring it up. So what we try and do is, as I say, get to know the organisation, get them excited about things that we could do together, then cost them up, and then take those costs back and say, if we want to do this together, this is what it's going to cost. Not with an expectation that they're going to cover the cost or just pay for it. It might be about looking for external funding together. And as I say, we're always very careful to cost in our costs in that, not just show them a supporting kind, even though in the end, that may well be what we contribute. So I think it's more about timing of the conversation about money and just being honest about what the costs are to realise the plans that we've developed together, rather than going with a project and saying, this is how much it would cost if you want it.
Okay, thank you. We do have a question in the chat from Rebecca. Do you have any thoughts on how this might translate to something like a consortium of partners, a local cultural education partnership, for example? How can they operate like this collectively, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I suppose the principle of getting to know each other first is really important. And I often think that going to something or doing something together is a great way of getting to know people. Having a bit of extended time, you can go to a meeting for a couple of hours and you can come away thinking, oh, that person was interesting. But actually that opportunity to spend a day together or go and see something, spend a night together, not literally. That breeds that kind of trust and collaborative nature that I think you really need. I know when I first went to the Tees Valley, it felt very competitive. It felt like everyone was really nervous about sharing. I think I've seen that culture really change over the last 15 years I've been there. And I think it comes with confidence. It comes with being confident to go, this is what we do, this is what you do, what can we do together? I think in terms of kind of consortia or partnerships, then approaching other partners it's about clarity. So it can be really confusing, you know, for someone in a different sector to really understand who we are, what we do, what we're proposing. So yeah, for me, it's just always about being really honest and having a real clear, yeah, whatever the opportunity is or whatever the conversation is, going with a sense of clarity.
Thank you. We have a question from Joe Gordon. Have you found your local authority has been supportive of these partnership endeavors? Have they offered any further support in making suggestions or introductions? And is their involvement positive? Yeah,
look, I should probably say, I feel like I work in the best local authority area in the country in terms of support for arts and culture and support for ARC. And I'm definitely going to miss them when I move on. Stockton Borough Council are fantastic in terms of supporting us. And I always say that support goes well beyond money. It is about partnerships. It is about opening doors. You know, the fact that you can just contact the Director of Children's Services and he will come and meet you and have that kind of honest, open conversation. I'm sure, you know, I've worked in a local authority before where I just know that wouldn't have happened. But I think it is about assuming that authority. It is about, you know, stepping up and recognizing that you are an anchor institution in that place, whoever you are. It's not about size or scale. It's about the value and the impact that you're making. It's about being persistent, and it's definitely about positioning yourself as a contributor to what they're trying to achieve. So I think when I first went to ARC, you know, we were very much seen as an organisation that the council funded, and we really tried to change that. And one of the reasons that we aligned ourselves with the voluntary and community sector in Stockton and joined the kind of third sector umbrella organisation, and were quite active in that at the beginning and have continued to be, is that we wanted to be seen as an organisation that was providing a service. And that might feel a bit icky to some arts organisations, but we felt like it was going to be much more beneficial for us to be seen by our council as an organisation that was providing something in the way that another third sector organisation might be, than as a kind of nice to have arts organisation. So I think it's a little bit about how you position yourselves. And we definitely set out to build relationships across the whole team of directors. We knew that we had champions. I always imagine a virtual table of the kind of the sort of corporate management team of the council, and we knew we had a massive champion in the director that led, you know, for culture and leisure. But actually, when they're looking at the budget, you know, crossing out things that they can't afford, we wanted to make sure there were other advocates for ARC around that table. So it was a very sort of strategic approach to try and build those relationships with children's services and adult services and some of the other directors.
Thank you. We have a question from Pete. If you have pre-existing relationships at a lower level, can you still go in at the top without making them feel overlooked?
Yeah, I think it's how you do it, and it's about making it clear that you're doing it to support what they're doing, not to undermine them or kind of override them, or to sort of devalue the opportunity or the work that they're doing. So we've definitely done that, but I think nobody wants to find out that somebody's met their boss without them knowing. So again, it's just about being open and saying, we really want to go and talk to whoever, because actually you're doing a brilliant job and we want to try and help you unlock more time and capacity and resources to do the things that we want to do together. So I think as long as you get the approach right, definitely don't think it should stop you.
Thank you. A question from Shada Khan. Thanks, Annabel, for a great presentation. Agree in regard to the value of investing time to build relationships. How can the established partnerships support / encourage newcomers?
It's about being generous and open and recognizing that, as I said at the beginning, we're not the experts. So whoever's coming into that field, you know, whether it's a new arts organization or a new partner, it's kind of, what can we learn from you? It's that curiosity. So yeah, being generous with the resources and the support and credibility, reputation maybe that established organizations might have built up, and sort of using that to embrace newcomers and, you know, treat them as equals. It's not about kind of parents and children. It's what we can learn from each other.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna take one final question from the chat. In what ways could the local authority nurture these partnerships without taking over?
Interesting one. I mean, there's part of me that thinks, and I think this is, you know, true to a certain extent in the Tees Valley, in the northeast, in the area that I'm in at the moment, is that it's quite paternalistic. The culture is quite paternalistic in terms of people having expectations of local authorities and what they're going to do. So there's part of me that says, well, we need to step up as independent organisations. I appreciate there will be local authority colleagues here, but, you know, we need to step up as independent organisations and go to them and you know, not expect them to do all the work. And I think there is a tendency for that sometimes because they're perceived to be the people with the contacts and the people with the kind of influence and resources. But I think it's asking for things that don't cost money. I remember when we were setting out to build relationships with the housing providers, someone who worked in the housing department at Stockton Borough Council was incredibly helpful in coming and talking to me. I just wanted to pick his brains about who the, you know, the big housing providers were, what the kind of culture was in each of the organisations. And at the end of it, he said, well, I can introduce you to all of them. How about we convene a meeting with all of them? And I was like, this is amazing. So I think, again, if you it's a bit sort of flatter people in a way, I suppose, you know, recognise the expertise that local authorities have and see that as a resource that is sometimes as valuable, if not more valuable, than any money that they might have to support what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce our next speaker now, who is Kat Stock from the West Midlands Police. Kat.
Would help if I muted myself, wouldn't it? Right. So unfortunately, I can't see anyone whilst I share my slides. So I will, as we've done with Annabel, I'll answer any questions at the end, but please do pop them in the chat as they come. So hi, my name's Kat. Thank you very much for having me today. For anyone who would benefit from an audio description, I'm a 37-year-old white female. I've got long brown hair, green eyes, and I'm wearing a red leopard print blouse today. So I'm here today from West Midlands Police to talk about the partnership that we had with the Coventry City of Culture Trust. And I've entitled this presentation When Worlds Collide because policing and the arts industry really are two very different worlds, and we learned a lot about that, which I'll get into more as well. But I think the key thing to think about here is potentially how you could work with partners who are probably mostly oblivious to the arts and the benefits the arts can bring, and how that kind of world works as well, and then what the benefits that you can achieve together are as well. So very quickly, as I've said, my name is Kat. I am currently a learning and delivery manager with West Midlands Police, but my previous role, as Kenneth said, was community engagement, partnership working, problem solving and evaluation lead on the West Midlands Police Coventry City of Culture team. And what that actually looked like is we were part of a very small embedded police team during the Coventry City of Culture, not just the year, but before and afterwards as well. So about 2.5 years spent on that. And the reason that came about is that when Coventry won the City of Culture title, we saw that as a really unique opportunity for this partnership and for us as the police to learn more about the benefits of arts and culture and how we could utilise that and bring about change as well. So yes, we did a very traditional policing kind of role in terms of safety and security for everything that happened throughout that year. But my area of business was all about that understanding and building of those partnerships and how we could work together to, as I said, achieve that positive social change. Very quickly, for those who don't know, Coventry was one of was the most recent UK City of Culture, and this is something that happens every 4 years, and cities bid for this. Essentially, it means that they're given a year-long focus on culture for that city. So for Coventry, that looked like lots of different events, projects, programmes that happened all throughout the year. So not just public facing, but a lot that went on behind the scenes as well. And it was all geared towards positive social change for the city. And when we're talking about Coventry, It's probably worth mentioning that there's a population of about 440,000. It's part of the wider West Midlands, but it is also, as Annabel said, of her area, one of the most, is in the top 10% of the most deprived areas in the country. It's also the most youthful city in the UK, and it's also in the top 10 most diverse areas in the UK as well. And when we started working with the City of Culture Trust, who are the organising committee behind this, as an embedded team, one of the first things that we found is that we really did have those joint objectives, especially in terms of the sorts of community groups that they were looking to work with, and some of the themes that they were looking to target throughout the City of Culture year. So we were both looking at mental health. We both wanted to work with young people, especially those at risk of exploitation, people with lived experience of homelessness, refugee and migrant communities. And also a key element was that collaboration with communities. And as the police, we were interested in how the arts might help us to reduce crime, support victims, but also that community engagement, how we might better collaborate and engage with communities, especially in mind with the kind of huge loss of trust and confidence in the police in recent years, as affected by lots of different factors and events going on. But it was really important for us to see how we might be able to build better relationships with communities and also change our policing practice. So why? I do have a background in the arts before I started working for West Midlands Police, and so I know, and you know, I'm sure you all know, and it's very widely researched in terms of the impact and the benefits the arts can bring, especially around social, health, economic benefits. And actually, when you're thinking about policing, those are all things that we need to target as well. Those are all things that we want to improve. They're all factors that can influence offending, they can influence vulnerability and victimisation. And so if we can bring about positive change in those areas, it's going to benefit us as the police as well and make Coventry a safer city. Very quickly, how do we seek to do that? So we looked at our shared objectives, and there was a huge bit at the start, before the City of Culture year even started, there was a real time and effort put into building that understanding of what the crossover was, that we both had the same objectives in terms of that positive social change. But then on our part from West Midlands Police, because the City of Culture Trust was built up of a lot of freelancers, not a lot of them actually lived in the local area. So as the police, we were able to bring that local knowledge, we were able to bring some of our existing partnerships, and we were able to show them also some of the additional benefits that the trust hadn't necessarily thought of, that so that the things they were aiming to do in the communities they're aiming to work with, they hadn't necessarily considered that actually this might make those areas and those communities safer as well, and bring about the sorts of outcomes that the police were seeking. Then on the flip side, obviously, the trust brought huge benefits to us as the police from this partnership. So yes, that understanding is how, as the police, we could use the arts, but also multiple opportunities and involvement. They brokered a lot of relationships as well, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail soon. And they also offered a third-party facilitation. So one of the key things we knew is that the communities we wanted to target and wanted to engage with didn't really want to talk to us. And so this was an opportunity for us to try and come about that in a different way. And the trust sometimes offered that third party facilitation to help us to not maybe engage directly with the community, but to understand their thoughts and feelings about the police and use that to impact how we might interact and behave with them. In terms of our involvement in all the kind of projects, programs, etc., there were kind of 4 tiers with a fifth that I'm going to tag on. And the first element was just offering that advice and guidance. So when potentially, as I said, with that local knowledge, when potentially the trust were looking at areas to run events, with the local knowledge we had, we were able to maybe steer them towards more deprived areas or areas that we knew didn't have a lot of community events going on and that sort of thing. Also advice and guidance around safety and security as well. So we were there as in that capacity for a lot of the planning and strategizing as well. The second tier is then that kind of active engagement presence. So when there were events going on, that was a real and incredible opportunity for us to just be there, not, as I said, in a kind of safety and security way necessarily, but just to be able to be at an event, to talk to members of the community and to be a bit visible presence there for them. The third tier then is actually we had officers and staff who actually took part in events or performed in events as well, and I'll give you a couple of examples of that. And then the fourth one are that there were actually some projects and programs that we as the police co-designed and co-delivered, and that was a huge benefit to us. One, because we were part of that planning process and we were able to shape those shared objectives and outcomes, but also by being part of the delivery, we were able to try and build those more positive relationships and trust from those who were taking part in the programs. And especially an element of that was we were able to try and humanise the police and generate empathy, whilst at the same time us better understanding those communities and groups that we were engaged with. The fifth tier that I mentioned briefly was then we also did some kind of self-driven events and projects as well, which again I'll give you just a couple of examples of to see what that looked like. So thinking about those tiers, so this is the kind of the one where we just turned up. So we had a series of community events called Party on the Green that happened at different places throughout Coventry. Here are some of our lovely officers with the chromatics. So that was a chance for us just to be there, yes, provide reassurance, but to talk to that local community and to give them a local face to the police as well. This is an example of that third tier I talked about. So there were two performances. One was called Theatre of Wandering and one was called Faith. And you can see our lovely PCSO on the left there, Ella, who actually played kind of herself or a PCSO in a travelling theatre piece about dementia, and then also another travelling theatre piece called Faith, where again they needed a couple of officers just to walk past at a particular point, and because of the relationship we built up and as part of the embedded team, we were able to provide that. This is that kind of fourth tier where we're talking about that co-design and co-delivery as well. So this is part of a wider piece where they were looking to increase murals and street art across the city, and we offered the end of our of Coventry Central Police Station as a location for a mural. But the mural is actually designed by both the police and those with lived experience of homelessness, and it was that co-creation process that was so important. And yes, then it accumulated in this beautiful mural that was in a very prominent place in the city centre. But the whole point of working together to try and co-design something and have this output enable people to share experiences, to decide what it was they wanted to say and what they wanted including in this mural, and that was a very valuable process. We also had what we think is the very first artist in residence with a police force in the UK. And we had an artist called Kay Rafai, who you can see in the bottom right image there, the gent in orange, who came in and spent time with both West Midlands Police and young people in Coventry to understand what the barriers are between positive relationships, what those young people's experiences were of the police and how that shaped their attitudes and perceptions. And then what role arts and culture might have to play in building bridges between young people and the police. And that's an ongoing thing that we're doing, and we're using the outputs. You can see a couple of images there. He produced a series of photographs and videos presenting kind of both sides and both sides of perceptions, and we're using those as provocations to try and bring about behavioural change within the police. We also had something called Forest Camp, which was an outreach project with local young people, where thinking about their mental health, how we could better engage them with green spaces through creative practice. So they did some vlogging, they did podcasts, they did music making, they did filmmaking, they did outdoor cooking, they did bushcraft. You can see lots of different examples here. But getting them to really think about what the reasons were that they didn't necessarily engage with green spaces in their area. And a huge thing that came out was safety, which is why the police were involved in this, so we could work with them to understand how we could improve safety and access for young people in their local area, and also to build those relationships. So we did have officers and PCSOs who were there and helped to facilitate these sessions. And then these are just a couple of examples of the kind of police-driven projects that we did. So this was a mural that was arranged by the local police team, and they worked with some of the community centre and some of the local community groups to design a mural that they wanted for their area. Hillfields is one of the most deprived areas in the country, and they were looking at ways of kind of bringing about more of that community cohesion, but again building and fostering some of those more positive relationships with the community. We also had, and I didn't know this before we started the project, a British Police Symphony Orchestra, which is made up of entirely voluntary musicians who also happen to work for the police in some capacity. And they also do outreach programs. So they came to Coventry and ran what they call play out. So several sessions with different schools in the area, building up engagement through kind of music and musical instruments. And we also delivered a concert at the end of the year, celebrating hope and celebrating coming together as well, which we offered free tickets to the community to come and attend, and that was a really great successful event. So just some examples there of how it worked. So what happened as a result of that? Benefits wise, we did see some positive change within those shared objectives, and Warwick University evaluated the project and they were able to pick up some of that. Obviously, it's hard to pinpoint exactly because there was so much going on, but we did have a lot of positive feedback and we did see some positive outcomes. We were also able to make sure that everything happened in the right places with the right people. And there was a huge amount of learning generated for both West Midlands Police and the City of Culture Trust. These points were taken from that evaluation that I noted that Warwick University did. And the interesting one was around building relationships. So the police building relationships with creative practitioners and with communities. And it's this comment here around kind of the very foundation of policing lying within communities. Police officers have to be seen, conversations have to be had with the local community. And unfortunately, we have seen that kind of method eroded because of austerity. So this introduced a really interesting and different way to try and rebuild that and build those more positive relationships. I will talk more about the relationships kind of creative practitioners in the challenges section as well. What we also saw was really good feedback about the police's willingness to engage. I think a lot of people were very surprised that the police were willing to do this. And you see there, you know, they're willing to listen. That's what I admire. They really did want to listen. And there was a willingness and curiosity from the police to be involved. So that was a real positive for us and a really good outcome. What was also really important is that, especially through the co-creation and co-production, we were able to build more equitable spaces and rebalance power. So there you can see that kind of historically is a very binary relationship between people in authority, the police, and people who don't have any power. And actually through this kind of co-creation, we were able to facilitate more of a power sharing, more of a cooperation. The police were on the same footing as the community members, and that was really powerful in terms of building understanding and empathy. And speaking of that, and I've mentioned it briefly, that humanising of the police and of the community. And the quotes there as well, you know, it's been an opportunity to connect on a human level. It strips away the uniform, it strips away preconceptions of people and job roles and authorities. It puts you on a level which is human. And again, people saying, you know, I think people forget that the police are people at the end of the day. And I think sometimes the police can forget that, you know, the community of people as well, because they have to deal with a huge volume of stuff going on. And so to actually bring people together and put a human face on things was very powerful. And we're continuing to build on that and understand how, again, we can use that to impact on how we police communities and our policing practice as well, especially in light of the Casey report and some of the observations that have come out of that. So those were not the benefits. Challenges wise, and I think this is reflected as well in what Annabel spoke about earlier, that wider police practice was key. And you see that illustrated here in that people said, you know, the reality of the police officers on the ground, they're still profiling, they're still stereotyping, still breaking the relationships before they've even been built. And so yes, our involvement in these kind of projects and programs was seen as great, and people were surprised and delighted by it. But the kind of perceptions of policing still as a whole hadn't really shifted, which showed us that we really need to maintain that practice and that involvement, but also we need to show people what the police are doing as a result of what we've learned and how we are making those changes. Also very interesting is there was a lot of suspicion about the police objectives, and as I said, we put a huge amount of work in at the start in terms of building trust and understanding. but people from the trust kind of saying it's not fully trusting that the police aren't just trying to gather loads of data rather than listening to people. Are they just trying to get a bit of intel about what's going on in the area instead of actually just wanting to listen to the community and what they have to say? And so there needs to be real clarity around that, and that trust needs to be built in order for it to function together. I think what we also found was that within the arts community, we see a lot of activism. There was a lot of mistrust anyway in the police, and we did have some artists and some creative practitioners who refused to work with us, and I can understand why as well. But luckily some did say that they would and consented to do so, and I think both parties learned a lot from that. Another challenge, I've kind of touched on it, is, just the individual or the wider institution. So someone's saying here, oh, the officer was very understanding. They said what we wanted to hear, but I couldn't shake the feeling. If we're in a completely different scenario, they wouldn't be speaking to me with the respect that they're speaking to me with. So it's that, so what? What are we going to do then as the police with what we've learned here? On the other end of it, the buy-in was difficult. I think as the police, we love sport. Sport's our go-to. It's our engagement tool. We understand it. It's very clear cut. And the arts is a bit mysterious. And so part of the project was trying to change that and to generate that buy-in. And we did to quite a broad extent. But also it's the whole kind of engagement approach, and some officers kind of see their job as, we are here to arrest people, and that's how we police. We keep people safe by taking bad guys off the street. Now, obviously, it's not as black and white as that, but, the West Midlands Police is comprised of 14,000 employees, and you're going to have, different viewpoints within that. But generating that buy-in as to both the approach and the benefits of arts and culture was also a bit of a challenge, but that we did succeed against to a great extent. And then also the time and resource was a real problem. You'll know that public cuts have decreased the numbers of police that are available. The West Midlands faced one of the biggest proportionate cuts and really struggled with capacity. And so we did get pushback saying, we haven't got enough staff to go to robberies in progress and shootings, and then expecting them to go and decorate a police station window. It just doesn't feel that the priorities are right there. So even though we know the benefits of what we were trying to achieve for our communities, there is that real pressure of priority. So Warwick, from their study, came up with some recommendations out of this that I think are very helpful in a broader sense, but also going back to what I said at the start, thinking about working with a partner who probably has very, very minimal understanding of the arts industry and how it works. And we did find that kind of the way policing world operates and the way that the arts industry operates was vastly different, and adjusting to that was huge. And that was a big part of that partnership at the start, and kind of understanding how we both operate and that coming together to figure out how we slot in together and how these worlds come together rather than rub against each other. But Warwick was saying here that they would recommend that there's an engagement with that institutional police culture change. So Coventry City Culture was the opportunity and the start of things. It's what we then take away and do with that, for that broader and wider change. And that is what people will need to see as a result of this partnership, which is a longer term piece of work, but it is ongoing. There's also that need to build the strong long-term relationships with organisations and networks. And we're really pleased to say that we had new and improved partnerships through this opportunity, but those partnerships are being maintained as well as we go forward. But with the police, there's a huge amount of churn in terms of kind of staff and roles and movement within departments and out of departments. So that longevity can be quite hard to maintain. So it's about finding ways to do that, and maybe have someone who is responsible for a particular partnership, no matter what their role within the organisation is. There's also that establishing of shared objectives, and I'll tie this into that ethical commitment, which is number 4 as well. And this is, as I spoke about, the kind of mistrust of what the police were all about and why we wanted to be involved. And we needed real clarity as to what we were there to do. It wasn't that we were trying to sneak about and gather intel in a sneaky way. It was that we were trying to build these relationships with communities, and this is the reason why, because it enabled us to help make those areas safer. It helped us, to have more positive relationships, helped us to change perceptions with these communities. Also considering the remit of our influence as well. The police really like to be in control. And again, this is something that Annabel talked about in terms of, having to give up that power but still take responsibility. And I think we needed and we learned quite quickly the establishing of what the police's role was within a particular project or programme and what it wasn't as well, and what we could control and what we couldn't, and what would be useful for the trust. For instance, we were able to share intelligence about an area and what the risks might be in terms of putting an event on there, so they were able to plan their security for it, etc. But what wasn't appropriate to share and what wasn't appropriate for us to expect of them. Also considering the police practice and police presence. And what's an interesting bit of feedback we received was, whilst we saw all these events as brilliant, this is a great opportunity for us to get out there and to talk to our communities. We need to be very cognizant of the nature of the event and the nature of the community group, and especially in terms of kind of historic police relationships. For instance, we had a kind of reggae and Caribbean festival that we thought that would be a great opportunity for us to go engage with our Black community and our Caribbean community in Coventry. Feedback we got from the public was that it was over-policed. There were too many officers there, and that was because it was a Black event. And we really had to take that on board and think about what our presence is saying to the community, as well as finding those opportunities. And finally, that respecting of organisational difference. So it was two worlds colliding, and it was finding that common ground, finding ways to work together, adjusting to each other's different ways of working in a way that was beneficial for both parties. So I'm going to move on now, just say thank you to any questions, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see people. I don't know if any have come through on the chat. But I will open up now.
That was really interesting. Please share your questions in the chat and I will read them out as before. So we have one from Charlie. The police artist residency is so interesting, and thank you for being so honest about the mistrust and the challenges throughout the projects. How did the resident artists navigate that with the work they created?
That is, I could talk for hours about this residency, and I'm happy to share some resources and also the Warwick paper that details a bit more about it, so I don't talk forever about it now. But what was interesting is that firstly, we found it really difficult to find an artist who was willing to come in and be a resident in a police force. The one that we did find, Kay, is actually a police abolitionist, and so for him it was he was very open and very honest to say that actually he, despite being an abolitionist, he had very little understanding of the police and how they operate, and he saw this as a real opportunity to come and see that side as well. It was difficult because there were, we wanted to open up ourselves as much as possible to Kay, but also there are some things that due to security and safeguarding and all those sorts of things that we couldn't share with him. But we just gave as much opportunity for him to experience the policing side as possible. He went out on patrols in neighbourhoods. He went out in with the response team to emergency calls. He spoke to our gangs team, offender managers, our public protection unit, our diversity and inclusion team, our chief constable. So we gave him an opportunity to speak to and interact with as many people as possible. And then, as I said, equally, he spent time with young people, mostly who had had negative experiences of the police in Coventry, and was able to build that. He didn't come in with a preconception of what he would produce at the end of it. He wanted that to be kind of led, especially by the young people. And they decided that they wanted their stories and experiences told through this photographic and film-based medium. And that then made quite a nice situation in that we wanted this residency to open up a dialogue, and by having the young person's perspective visually, that was part one of an opening gambit to a dialogue that then he had the police response to, which was two sides of a dialogue, and then we were able to use that visual provocation to continue that dialogue and conversation going forward. I don't know if that's answered your question, but hopefully gives a bit more context.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Graham. Sorry if I missed this, but where did the money for this come from? Was it wholly City of Culture funded?
Right, so obviously Coventry City of Culture does now, but didn't come with any funding. So the Coventry City Culture Trust were a charity and they relied on donations and charitable funding. We did provide funding from within the police as well to put towards it. So it paid for our time, obviously, as the team, but it also we did input funding into some of the projects. I think that was the most difficult thing to kind of because it was a real proof of concept and we hadn't tried this before. We were very lucky we had senior investment in terms of this as an approach, and we're able to put some funding towards it.
Great, thank you. We have a question. Thank you for acknowledging or highlighting the significant challenges related to the police personnel churn. You have suggested that having a named person, regardless of portfolio, as lead for partnerships. Is this something that West Midlands Police have adopted?
Yes and no. So I'm kind of the de facto arts and culture stuff person now for West Mids Police. So despite kind of moving role, luckily I've gone into the learning and development department, which means that, you know, this is still part of how we learn and develop as an organisation. It's trickier on a local level because we do have a partnerships team. There is someone who is responsible for local partnerships, and also we're looking at how they develop more arts-based partnerships as well. That person will change though, but the role will still be responsible for that. So yes, that makes it hard because you have to build up the personal relationship again, but it has kind of designated a responsibility to hold those partnerships as part of a local department.
Jackie, who I believe was part of the Coventry City of Culture team, just wanted to acknowledge that police did much more than just turn up to party on the green. They helped tell everyone in the neighborhood about the event, and they acted quickly when half the sound equipment was going to be stolen the night before the event. Rebecca also had a question about what the legacy has been, and is this kind of approach still happening?
Yeah, I mean it's difficult because obviously City Culture was such a, you know, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for the West Midlands, and it was kind of, even though it lasted a year, it's fleeting, and it was there, and how do we then make the most of it? I think we have maintained a lot of those relationships, but as the police, I think we have looked at then how we. And I am still looking at how we use that learning in terms of how we go about things. So, for instance, we're looking at how we can use arts and culture-based approaches in our training, and looking at virtual reality. We've used outputs from the artist in residency to review and look at how we enact our warrants processes. We've got a new role who's a kind of a liaison officer for households that have had a warrant executed at them as well. So it is having a legacy in terms of changes that the police are making, but also in Coventry, I think, as I said, those relationships are still there. Working with the arts sector, we're looking at how we can replicate that in the other areas around the West Midlands now.
Great, thank you. So the last question I'm going to take is from Emma. How long before the Year of Culture did you start to think about this approach, and how long did it take to establish a mutual understanding and approach?
So the kind of, I came onto the team a year before City of Culture actually launched, as it were. But there was planning before that for a good 8 to 10 months as to what the approach would be and what the team would look like and what we would try and do. So it was really kind of a 3 to 4 year project in terms of the pre-work and then the legacy work afterwards as well. But it took a long time. I think it was useful that because we're an embedded team, COVID made it hard because we weren't in a shared workspace, but we were in shared virtual spaces, and just building those personal professional relationships was really valuable, and that stood us in really good stead, I think, going forward, having that trust, having open conversations, etc.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. We're going to take a break now. So we will see you at 11:25. So we'll come back for our last speaker. Thank you so much. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are going to get started again with presentation from Sally Lockey from Right Up Our Street, a Creative People and Places project. She is going to be accompanied by Tracy Fry from the City of Doncaster Council.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, sure. Hold on, let me just make sure you're pinned to the top. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you. So good morning, everybody. As Rebecca mentioned, Right Up Our Street is a creative people and places project for Doncaster. We're currently in our 11th year of delivery. The project has shifted and changed as we've learned more about the community. And one of the biggest shifts has been opening out our delivery to cover the full borough. I wanted to talk to you today about a new area of work that's right at the beginning of its development. So as part of our phase 4 programme of work, we've committed to delivering an initial 3 years artist in residence programme within the Bawlby Bridge estate here in Doncaster, as a means to get to know the community on a deeper level and to begin to think and talk about how best to programme a meaningful programme of co-created and curated work. Over the past 11 years, we've learnt that to develop a meaningful programme, it takes time, and key to this is building trust. Through an initial focus period of time, we hope to build that trust and agency and a firm understanding of needs, and ultimately how we can collectively shift a long-held narrative about a community here within Doncaster. We've learned from Tina over at West Coast that the best way to open doors in a social housing estate is to invite that social housing provider onto your consortium, and that's what we've done. Next slide. There we go. So the Office for National Statistics says that the estate Bawlby Bridge is currently ranked 55th most deprived area in England. That's out of 32,000 neighbourhoods. The community itself, as you can see, is surrounded by a dual carriageway, making it an estate that people very much view from the outside. The area itself has now developed a stigma attached to it for various different reasons. Not helped by the local media. So Doncaster Free Press and the Yorkshire Post have got the following things to say about this estate in Doncaster. And negative stories like this have been in existence for a generation. And growing up in Doncaster, this was the perception that I developed of this particular estate myself as well. And it's compounded by stories like this one. In 2014, the only footbridge leading into that estate was fell down after it was struck by a lorry passing underneath it, and it was never replaced. The estate itself also doesn't really have a name. I'm calling it the Bawlby Bridge estate, but the more people we speak to, the more we realise that different people have different names for it, whether that is the Bawlby Bridge estate, the St James estate, the Island, Bawlby Flats. These views and opinions of the wider borough have led really to the people living there thinking less of themselves also. These are some of the conversations that we've had getting to know the estate. We were really keen to baseline where the estate was when we first started working there. So these are some of the comments that we captured from online surveys. So nothing positive, as you can see. It's really quite sad. What I'm keen to do today is talk to you on a little a deeper level about what we already know about the estate. I personally love the estate. I think that it's super interesting, and I want to share a little bit of why that is with you today. So it was built in the 1960s. The estate has a relatively small footprint and was built in response to a need for greater levels of housing stock in the town. I particularly love this image. So this is the architect's original designs when they were planning the estate in Doncaster Town Centre. So it was well considered, it was well planned. It has plenty of open spaces, play parks, community centres. It has shopping precincts, a primary school, a number of churches serving different religions, and a mix of housing stock from sheltered accommodation, masonettes, flats, and of course, the occasional pub or two. So these are some of the other community groups that are based on the estate. As you can see, it's incredibly well served. And this, again, is one of the reasons why I love this particular area of Doncaster. I also wanted to share some stats with you about this particular community. So if you look at the ethnicity of Bulby Bridge compared to the rest of Doncaster, it's hugely different. It's culturally rich and very diverse, making it a super interesting place to be and to work. Another interesting data slide is the representation of the different religions on that estate as well. Again, very different from the rest of the borough of Doncaster. I wanted to show you this too. So going further back in time, beneath where one of the tower blocks currently stands is very little of the remains of this particular building. So this building is called the Sand House, and it was created in 1850 by someone called Henry Senior, a Victorian businessman and sandstone quarry owner. When they were excavating the sandstone out to be used as building stone, Henry Senior instructed his workers to carve out the shape of a mansion in his quarry, and this became his home, the Sand House. And beneath the Sand House, he also created a series of tunnels and sculptures. And I think it's stunning, and it's so super interesting, and it's a beautiful story. But what is also important to me and to that community is that unless they say so, it's not relevant to the programme of work that we're about to develop on the estate. But it will be there, and it will be something that we will discuss with them. So in order to open doors and get to know the community a little bit better, over a year ago, we embarked on an artist in residence programme. We wanted this programme to be led by the community and give them the opportunity to influence and engage along the way. I will say that the artist in residence programme is something that we, as I said, have in place for 3 years as a means to get to know the community, but we were really aware that we needed to programme the first artist. We needed to do that because we'd not built relationships with the people living and working on the estate yet. But I'm also aware that our knowledge and experience of working in the arts meant that we could choose somebody who the estate would respond well to. So we chose to work with a photographer called Jamie Bubb. Now, why Jamie? Jamie's from the area. Jamie understands Bulby, has spent time in Bulby Bridge. He's also a photographer. His particular practice focuses on storytelling and understanding the community and people that he documents. So it felt like the right approach to start initiating conversations with the people that live and work on the estate. This is a little quote by Jamie I particularly love. So over the course of a year, Jamie's been thinking and developing a project, one which would do exactly what we would hope, to start talking to as many of those community groups and residents as possible to use the project by stealth, I suppose, if you like, to get to know those people a little bit better, and then to start having conversations about what's important to them about the estate. What's the need on the estate? How can we develop a programme that responds to that need? So Jamie's project initially started out as being called 100 Faces of Bulby Bridge, where Jamie was inviting members of the public to come and have their photograph taken, but not just have their portrait taken. He wanted to instill a sense of agency in those individuals. So he asked them to bring an item, object that was important to them into that photograph. He also allowed them to change the colour of the flash filter so that they could add a different colour to their own individual portrait. And he also gave them the clicker so that they could take their own photograph when they were ready and in their own time. So this is Jamie in action. Some of the groups that Jamie so far has started working with include the Smile group on the estate that supports the needs of adults with learning difficulties. He's also been working with the Deaf Society on the estate. Again, another community group that are based there that we've struggled to open doors to and reach and have conversations with. So it's really helped enable us to do that. He's spent time working with Atlas Primary School. Again, it's one of the more diverse primary schools in Doncaster. I believe there are 28 different languages spoken within that primary school. So he went in, presented his work, and then he worked with a group of young people who became his team, his in-house lighting crew that helped take photographs. And these are some of the portraits that he's been producing on the estate. That we absolutely love them, and I think they are truly stunning, as you can see. This is one of my favourite ones. This particular image, again, is one of my favourites. So this gentleman attends the Conversation Club, which is a voluntary organisation on the estate that supports refugees and asylum seekers. So this gentleman was keen to create an image that represented who he felt he was. So he's a farmer and hopes one day to be a farmer again. So he spent time finding plants that he could curate in his photograph, and obviously adding a green filter to his photograph to represent his love of nature. So the first year of working with Jamie is now coming to a close, with a final exhibition taking place this weekend. It's no longer called 100 Faces of Bulby Bridge, because he took far more than 100 images. I think we've got around 200 now of the community there. What we've learned so far about that particular community is that, yes, it has a long-term negative stigma attached to it. But what we've found is that the community has a really strong social sense of social responsibilities. That, as I said, many community centres there, all looking after different people and their needs, some of them voluntary, some of them not. But what was happening was that those community groups were very much operating in silo due to budgetary and time restraints. But the willingness there to speak to one another, to work together and collectively support the residents and the people that they serve. So it made best sense to us and to Jamie to create an outdoor exhibition of those images. So this is just a mock-up of what it'll look like at the weekend, but we've created a trail that wraps around the estate, that takes people out and guides them through the people that live and attend the estate, with little bits of information about each community group, again as a means to inform the community that live and attend the estate about what else is going on there, and hopefully to make them feel welcome in the other venues and community centres. We also will use the celebration event at the weekend as a means to talk to the community about what they would like to see next. What would they like to see happening in their community next? And at this point, I really want to bring in Tracy. So Tracy Fry is the Family Hub manager and has been a huge supporter of ours across the last year. I'm going to just quickly change to an image of the Family Hub, and I'm going to hand over to Tracy to talk to us a little bit more about this particular image and the work that we've been doing in partnership with her.
Thank you, Sally. I've been itching to get in and speak about everything that you've been saying. I feel really proud to be a part of what you're doing in the community. As the Family Hub manager, we're across central area. We've got 3 family hubs, but the one that we're focusing on in Bowlby Bridge is right in the heart of the community. Talking about Jamie's project, the 100 Faces, we're really pleased that we're going to be the host venue for that celebration event. Really, as Sally was saying, there is a lot of different partners involved in the community. And since COVID, I'm really sorry. Can you hear my dogs? Sorry, somebody's just knocked on the door. They've gone quiet now. So yeah, we've been really proud to be part of the community. Since COVID, we have lost the partnerships slightly, just as it's worked. We've all ended up working in silo and trying to just manage our own sort of service. But we were involved in we did things with the Deaf Society, the Quaker House, the asylum seekers and refugees. And although we're still working with those people, we're just not in there working. The partnerships has been lost slightly. So right up our street, putting this event on is going to be great for us. And I'm really looking forward to Saturday to make those links again. They've sort of brought that to us and give us more capacity to be able to do that in that one event. And they've sort of managed the whole lot, so we can just come along and just network and get those partnerships up and running again. It's been great, actually. The picture that you can see online now for that's the wall art that we had done. Again, facilitated by Right Up Our Street, and they come to me and said, this is what we're planning, would you be willing to sort of let us do this on your wall? And we were so excited straight away. We've always felt like we've been thoroughly involved right from the onset. Right Up Our Street, but Hayley, the project manager for that, as she come in and with the design with Rob Lee, who was the artist, they really listened to us. We got the community in, partners in, and we had a working group to say, what do you want it to look like? What is this estate, and what is it that you're trying to sort of achieve? And as you can see, all the lines and the colours, they're based on our Family Hub logo. For the colours were based on our Family Hub logo. We wanted everyone to be able to see what we were, what we're about, and to make us really stand out. And I think it's really achieved that. We've had such good comments from families, from communities, and from partners as well, who have said, oh, we've heard about you all art, and we're looking forward to coming to have a look. So I feel really proud of it, and I feel really proud that this is happening on the estate. Some of the feedback that we've had as well, as we've got some more of the wall art is in the different community venues. As we're walking along, it really connects us. So as we can see, and I'm thinking, I can't wait until Saturday to get into that building that's got the same art as what we've got, and just to have a chat with them about how that feels and how we can work together, and what it's meant for them and their experience as well. So just feel really, really lucky to be part of this and to watch how things are improving on the estate as well, and just what the community are thinking and feeling around that. So yeah, I feel like I've babbled and I might have missed a little bit of what I'm wanting to say, but yeah, I just feel like I'm really passionate about it, and I can see what this is doing for our community, and it's definitely changing the profile for the community as well, which is just nothing but positive from us. So thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. I will say that Tracy and her team have been like a second home for us, and this is what we love about our job. We get to know a community, we talk to them, we ensure that we listen, and whatever we create is co-created, co-curated, and that's really important. yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. And then to be able to then offer the Family Hub as the hub for our celebration event for another project at the weekend has been brilliant, and really demonstrates the strength of partnership, I think, of us being able to work together. I think it's also important to say that this particular project, we always said the first 3 years of this Artist in Residence programme would be purely a getting to know the community and our exercise, and less about outcomes and outputs. However, we were given the opportunity to apply for some shared prosperity money via the Space to Create fund in Doncaster, and it was one of those pots of cash that were quite thick and fast, and it would have been a shame to pass up on applying for, but because of the work that Jamie had been doing and opening doors and starting those conversations with new partners, it meant that we were able to go straight into working with Tracy and her team, invite community members in and create something that is beautiful, that enables them to be seen, because that was a lot of the conversations we were having with the community was about the fact that they wanted to be more visible. So we were able to do something, as I said, thick and fast and beautiful for the community, and one which looks on to Atlas primary schools. So it helped us to build a relationship with them as well, with Rob Lee, the artist, going in and having conversations about his work. I will say also that he got harassed every day by school children in the playground who would shout at him through the fence, telling him that he could do it, and how amazing the work was. So we had this constant fan base that were distracting him from doing his job. So I also quickly wanted to mention the second round. So we were successful with that Space to Create money, and a second round came up, and we'd had conversations, as I said, with numerous partners on the estate, and the Deaf Community Centre had said, oh, well, you know, we'd really like something like that as well. You know, we feel hidden in the estate, we don't feel seen. So we worked closely with them and an artist called Hixie that, who features a lot of hands within her street art, and developed a second piece of street art on the estate, which has BSL embedded in it. As I said, they were really keen to be seen, and a little bit about it to talk a little bit about who they feel they are. As you'll see, the design is slightly different because obviously it was created in collaboration with the Deaf Community Centre. So they'd asked for certain elements of it to be changed and flowers to be changed. They felt that the sunflower was much more welcoming and representative of who they are. So going back to the work in the wider estate, other things that we've been able to do on the estate was to invite our community advisors. So that's our community group that help us to decide who we should be working with and where, to hold our quarterly meeting on the estate. Again, I think it's really important that our community, the people that we work with, get to know the estate, get to know the real estate. So having them meet within the estate and hear a little bit more about Jamie's project was really important. And what we've learned so far is that perceptions do feel like they are shifting now. As I said, we're collecting data and surveying throughout. We're really interested to see how people perceive themselves on the estate, as well as how other people perceive them. So this was a really lovely comment that we came across. I like this as well. I stole it off Facebook. So what else is happening now is, instead of people being fearful of this estate that they know nothing about other than what they've been fed by the media, is that people are seeing that there is street art on the estate that they really want to go and visit. So it's becoming this place that people who are interested in street art want to go to and want to visit, which is really nice. So we're creating a little bit of jealousy within the estate, within Doncaster as well now. If you were to Google the Free Press and headlines about Bowlby Bridge, instead of those original 3 headlines that I showed you, these are the top 3 that are now coming up. They're all in relation to the art on the estate and the things that are happening there. So we're really keen to see how that perception as I said, from outside, it changes how people feel about the estate and what that does to the people that live and attend the estate and how they feel about where they are living and where they go for their education. He also included this. I mean, who doesn't love a cat story? I mean, it does beg the question, would this particular story have been featured if we hadn't have developed such a good working relationship with the Free Press in Doncaster? Because, as I said, historically, the stories have always been very negative. But I love that they've just featured, this was like, I think last week, the week before, Tracy? I don't know if you saw it. Anyway, I love that they're featuring a story about a cat rescue on the estate. And what do people want to see more of? So, as I said, whenever we have a celebration event, we had a celebration event for the launch of the work at the Family Hub. We'll be having another one this weekend. We're trying to find as many routes into asking the community questions about what they deserve, what they'd like to see more of. And these are some of the things that are coming out of that inquiry. We also have colouring in sheets for children so they can create their own street art on buildings in Bawlby Bridge. So all of those things are being harvested and they're fed into our understanding of what's needed and what's wanted and what should come next. And then lastly, outcomes so far. So we have a third-party evaluation team. We've been evaluating this project from the beginning. And these are some of the findings that the evaluators are already seeing emerging from this programme of work. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. It's obviously only in its first year. I hope at the very least it's a 3-year programme of work, and at best it's something that we're able to continue and for much longer than 3 years, but ultimately that we do shift perceptions about how people view the estate of Bawlby Bridge and how those individuals view themselves and the way that they engage with the work that we're developing.
Thank you so much, Sally and Tracy. That's really interesting and really positive comments coming in the chat about the visibility and inclusivity of the project. A question from Ali about how long the photographs were able to be showcased. I think they were Jamie Bubb's photographs.
Yeah, so the artwork I'm actually going to start putting up this afternoon with the team. So it's going to be in various different places. There'll be window vinyls in all of the partners, the buildings. They will be on lampposts. They will be on garage doors. So the plan is that they will stay in situ for a week. And then, and I should say, it's super important that whatever we produce with and for the community, that work is seen there first and it's for them. Everybody that was photographed also gets a copy of a photograph for themselves to keep. But then whenever we produce a project at Right to Pass Street, we try to make sure that we make the most of it and that work is seen as much as possible and celebrated as much as possible. So those final artworks will then feature in an exhibition that sits alongside our Festival of Light in November, so that it's given much more, much broader status, much more audience engagement. And I've actually just been sent an email this morning from DARTS, Doncaster Community Arts, asking if it might be possible to show some of the images in their gallery space as well. So we love that, any opportunity to show the work, because I think it's really important that we share people's stories, as I said, first and foremost where they live, but then with a wider community after that.
Great, thank you. I'm glad it's getting more interest. It deserves to be shared far and wide, I think. So a question from Vanessa, who says, I think there's an interesting thought around place-based consortia, working groups who are frontline delivery and partnership that are more strategic. How do they align?
Oh, ask me that one again.
So I think it's about the kind of alignment between frontline delivery and strategic partnership within working with your place-based consortia. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah,
on that?
I mean, it's been really good for us to be able to invite St Leger Homes to be a part of our consortium. That was a conscious decision that we made about 2 years ago, because it's really important that we understand the needs in the communities that we work with, but it also means that we're able to reach into those communities, making best use of their facilities and their resources. But then working with people like Tracy and the Family Hub, it also enables us to better understand the needs of the people that she serves, because she and her team are the specialists in their area of delivery. So, you know, when we talk about programming, we always start with the need, and to fully understand the community takes a very, very long time. So having access to professionals like Tracy, who have a firm understanding of her community and can help us reach into that community, really helps us to fast track that relationship, I suppose, but also better understand it. So did that answer your question?
So Vanessa?
Yes, my dog's barking. Yes, thank you.
A question from Emma. It seems that this community is quite well served in terms of infrastructure in many ways. What do you think was the barrier to people working together previously and with the community engaging with the support?
Tracy, do you want to say a little bit more about that? Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. So I think before, we've been there for, I think around 20 years now, and I think we're well established, and we did have some really good links and partnership links. I think the barrier for the working with professionals or for the community engaging, do you think? Because I still think maybe, although we had the good links, we would, as Family Hub staff, we would actually go into the other venues to support. So whatever their key area for delivery is, we would support that by going in and supporting the children and families whilst they were getting the key messages that they wanted from that service. So if it were for the asylum seekers and refugees, whilst they were getting the messages of what they needed from there, we would be helping with the children's side. And so the partnership just really worked, because we were able to provide families with lots of information and services whilst they're just in one spot, rather than having to come to all of us. So I think COVID really sort of disjointed all of that, and during the process of COVID, not only were we not able to go into the other places, staffing's changed as well. So it's them key links that you had have just sort of gone. But not only that, we've been really short-staffed, and I think everybody's had the same issue. So we're in a bit of a recruitment crisis as well. So we just haven't had the time to be able to make those links again, to start those services back up and running that we had before that seemed to work so well. So I think definitely this project is going to enable us to do that, because we're having big events that are just one-off things that are allowing us time. They're on a Saturday as well, and we don't generally do many things on a Saturday, working Monday to Friday. And I think that's just it's just helped our capacity, because we're not trying to do something else at the same time as our everyday job. So does that answer that? Okay?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, again, just from an outsider's perspective and getting to know the community, it does seem to have done quite a lot of damage, COVID. And speaking in relation to the Conversation Club that support refugees and asylum seekers, they had to stop delivering for 2 years during that period. And so it meant, as you say, a lot of those contacts were lost, but also a lot of the community groups that meet and service that community are all very, very different in their delivery and the people that they serve. So, you know, they mightn't, it's almost like the project's giving people an opportunity, an excuse to start those conversations again. So, you know, the adults with learning difficulties, for example, or the Deaf Community Centre, to start talking to one another again, because they're so busy recruiting, getting back to where they were pre-COVID, that they've just not had the the impetus, the opportunity to start relationships and thinking about how they could work collaboratively again. And arts programs are giving them that opportunity, and the additional capacity that we can add is helping to enable that as well. But it's all being done from a joyous perspective as well. I think that's worth saying. You know, everything that we try to do, deliver as a program, is a celebration of people and their culture. So to do it in a joyous way, I think is really helpful.
Thank you, Sally. That's wonderful. I think that was the last of our questions in the chat. We had some great comments, though, sometimes about the experience, the contrast between the experience of people working on the ground with arts and culture versus those who are higher up and doing the budgets and cutting the funding. Other shared experiences about negative media in certain areas and the impact that can have. So I'd really like us to have as much time as possible in the breakout groups. So I'm going to put you in small groups to discuss and reflect on what's been shared today and to share your own experiences of cross-sector partnerships. So when we were co-creating this program with representatives from Creative People and Places projects, local cultural education partnerships, and cultural compacts, it came up a lot that one of the most valuable things that we could provide was just informal time for people to chat with each other and share experiences and help each other kind of problem solve and brainstorm. So our place-based peer learning program is going to consist of a fair amount of that time where we can. So today I'm going to kind of give you about 20 to 25 minutes to just be in small groups and chat to each other. I've provided some guiding questions, which I'm just going to post in the chat. And your discussion leaders will have those as well. Each group has somebody to just kind of guide the discussion on a kind of casual, informal kind of way. And we also have a Jamboard for you to kind of share resources. Sometimes because of the breakout rooms, the chat is sometimes difficult to save. So what we thought was we would create a Jamboard and then people can share resources and thoughts with each other, and we can share that afterwards. If you require BSL, please let me know and I can put you in a group with one of our wonderful interpreters who've been working so hard through this event. So I'm going to put the Jamboard link in the chat so everybody has it, and I'm going to open the breakout groups in a moment.
Discussion. I know we had a good discussion in our group, and we'll share any information that was on the Jamboard, although I have to confess I didn't get into the Jamboard, but that's probably just me, so I'm being honest there. So just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone for coming along today, and thank you so much to all the speakers. Fantastic talks from all of you and really insightful, useful things that we can keep thinking about, and a big thank you to our steering group as well, who've all the input they've had, and obviously to Kenna and Lucy in shaping this. What we just want to flag to you is that we will be making a recording available of this, and we will be actually offering space each month just to chat and connect with partners, to learn from your colleagues across the country. And so each session will be themed and there'll be guiding questions, but essentially it's really about providing people that space to network and connect, because that's what people asked for. And if you'd like to join in any of those connect and reflect sessions, the link to register for them is in the chat. So do join up to that. And then if that's something you're interested in. And then the other thing we wanted to let you know is that we're in the process of launching a social networking site for place-based peer learning, excuse me. And it's on a platform called Hivebright. And we're going to be able to share all the resources and recordings, and people will be able to network with each other on that site. And you'll also be able to have discrete groups for CPPs, for LSEPs, for cultural compacts, but also crossover groups. If people want to set up their own groups to talk about rural issues, for example, then there'll be an opportunity to do that on this networking site. We think it's going to be really good and really useful. But of course, sometimes these things are only as good as the people who use them. So we just would encourage you all to register for that. And as soon as it's live, we will send out the joining instructions to that to anyone who wants to. So once again, we hope you found it useful. Thank you to everyone for coming along. And yeah, we hope that we can see you all again at future events, and certainly the next one in September. Thanks, everyone.